Do you ever get frustrated in the industry that you work in? I interviewed 48 people and I asked them where the profession felt short of expectation. The consensus that came out was it's not about the lack of technology, but more about the failure to execute on the opportunities and the tech in front of us. Everyone agrees that radical change is non-negotiable. If you don't change, you will be changed. We're giving leaders in the accounting world the ammunition they need to get ahead of these trends. See you next time. Do you ever get frustrated in the industry that you work in, the sector, the community, the town, the office? It happens to all of us. We've been doing a series called Accounting Reflections here on the Accounting Voices podcast. I'm your host, Rob Brown, coming out to you every week on a Tuesday, sharing the key drivers of change and disruption in accounting firms and what the professionals like you out there are doing about it to get ahead of the game and stay relevant. So this Accounting Reflections series, I interviewed 48 people for 10, 12 minutes each, and I asked them all the same 5 questions. Question 1 we did last week, which was, what defined 2025 for you? It's always good to look back at the lessons of history to tell us what might be coming up and how we can handle things better. In this episode, after looking at what shifted in the profession, we're now addressing a tougher question, and I asked all of the people I interviewed where leaders, influencers and experts and practitioners and people just like you felt frustrated, where the profession felt short of expectations, anything that disappointed them, anything that challenged them, anything that annoyed them. Because when you ask lots of people the same question, you get lots of different answers, but you do get perspective and you start to get trends. And there was some disappointment. Obviously, I asked them outright, what disappointed you? And it's okay for things not to be perfect because that's what challenges is, isn't it? I always remember a quote from Jim Rohn. He said, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better. So don't pray for more easier challenges, pray for more skills. That's what we're going for here. So the disappointment that came out, the consensus that came out was, it's not about the lack of technology, but more about the failure to execute on the opportunities and the tech in front of us. So if I had to frame 2025 around a dominant frustration, it would be this, the implementation paradox, if we can put it that way. Everyone agrees that radical change is non-negotiable. If you don't change, you will be changed. And I've said on this show before, if you think change is hard, then try not changing. And yet the profession, there's a sense that it still remains shackled by its own legacy habits. That could be legacy technology or just a legacy profession. I'm going to quote a few people now that came on and said some interesting things. It's always good to shout out the experts. Adam Klein captured this perfectly when he said, and you can go back on our LinkedIn Voices, Accounting Voices company page and find all of these interviews. They're great watches, 10, 12 minutes long. So Adam Klein said that when you ask firms whether they need to do things differently, they say yes. But when you ask whether they're actually doing it, the answer is no, or maybe a reluctant yes. And that gap between agreement and action, between promise and fulfillment, defined the year, actually. And the first frustration leaders voiced in terms of execution was obviously technology. It's racing ahead of process. It's going faster than we can handle it. Corinna Creed didn't soften her language. She said, you cannot put bad processes or unprepared teams into good technology. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your money. It's a waste, she said, of your cultural capital. I thought that was a great way to put it. Chelsea Summers, who I co-host the Inside Public Accounting podcast with, hit the same nerve with the metaphor that came up repeatedly across these conversations. She talked about putting a new engine in an old car, and it doesn't make it run any better if you don't redesign the systems around it. So in 2025, firms bought the shiny new thing. Could be AI, it could be insert any other product, service, technology, but they didn't fix the broken pipes underneath the infrastructure, if you like. So that's technology and execution. Another source of frustration from a lot of people I interviewed came from the vendor ecosystem itself. When we talk about the sheer weight of accounting software, apps, platforms, it's legion, isn't it? And Ian Vassin of Carbon, who you know really well, doing a wonderful book with, ignore that bit. Ian Vassin of Carbon flagged what many leaders are feeling when they talked about overselling and overpromising. And that is a key theme, isn't it? We have vendors that promise you the earth, and AI included, and AI integrated. It does this, does that, and it's a one-stop shop. And they're great at selling things because that's their job. They've got to hit quota, they've got to get targets nailed down. And there's so many people out there, so many startups, so many big providers. And they're finding it harder and harder to get the attention of accountants. I may have told you before, accountants are the second most sold to profession in the world, behind doctors. Everybody that wants a conversation with an accountant looking for that little bit of attention, a little bit of interest, and then boom, the floodgates will open. And that's why accountants are quite reticent. Azuna Anyanwu expressed his irritation bluntly. He said, the rush to enable everything is a problem. AI, enable my mouse. He said, AI, do everything. And there's a growing sense that firms are being sold advisory in a box. That's another one, without the organizational readiness to deliver it. So many vendors now are jumping on the advisory bandwagon and we can help you with this, this, and this to help you deliver advisory. But there's a lot needs to happen within the firm, the mindset, the operational readiness to deliver that. It needs packaging right, pricing right, delivering right. A lot of firms are not ready for that. So the promise comes before the execution. And the frustration is not necessarily with AI. It's with the hype layered on top of the fragility with AI. It could do so much for us, but it really isn't. And most of us, myself included, are still dabbling with AI and not properly getting into agents and all the other great things it can do. Some people are. I could name a few accounting techs that are on the bleeding edge of AI and doing some incredible things. Let's move on. The third disappointment that came through with a few people was decision paralysis. That's a great phrase, isn't it? Decision paralysis. Jin Chang, Field Guide, described this, and they sponsored the whole series. Amazing AI maturity framework that they've got right there. So check that out. He described it as the hypervelocity of the market. And many firms are still trapped in what he called the slow partnership age decision-making. The partners do make the decisions. Partners are getting older, and it takes longer to get decisions made. That's frustrating. Dominic Piscopo, check out his show, was frustrated by the wait-and-see approach. He noted that by the time firms decide to act on top-tier talent on new software, the opportunity is already gone. Accountants are famous as a breed for being laggards, not the early adopters, the late adopters, the wait and see. You can even see it on LinkedIn, a lot of social platforms where they don't engage, they will lurk. They will stand on the periphery and look in and see what other people are doing and saying, and that's fine. Randy Crabtree, the legend from Trimera, added another layer to this when he talked about the busy work creep. He said professionals spending time on menial tasks are doing it simply because they feel they have to be busy. So in 2025, it seems that activity was often mistaken for progress. Buying things, trying things, it's not doing it. We've got to move the dial more than now. Let's talk about another, and probably the most uncomfortable frustration was the inward focus of accountants and accounting firms. So Randy Johnston, who probably has worked with most of the big firms and big software companies in the US, has a wonderful podcast with Brian Tankersley on CPA Practice Advisor called The Technology Lab. He pointed to a clear lack of focus on clients. So firms are so overwhelmed by internal pressures, mergers, private equity, AI adoption, restructuring, business models, partner models, succession, that they're frankly not getting there with the high-value advisory, which is where the competitive advantage is going to be. And we've all been so busy fixing ourselves that we forget the people paying the bills sometimes, the clients. Another frustration, going to mention this, centered on talent. You would expect this. Darryl Petrick from Bowen, amazing firm in Stockton, Northern California, really punching above their weight, awarded one of the best by the IPA listings. And Darryl's returned to the image that captured the emotional weight of the year, and he talked about a boa constrictor coming around us, making it tighter and squeezing us more and more. And it's a lovely analogy, isn't it? And what made this even more disappointing for many people, none of this was new. It's not like it's crept out from behind a boulder and surprised everybody. Despite years of warning, firms are still relying on what Darryl described as a broken apprenticeship model. Nancy McClelland, wonderful personality, a really sharp voice in the accounting world, added that the rollbacks on DEI are a problem. Again, we promise a lot, but we don't actually follow it through. She argued that politicizing these issues, it harms the profession as a whole, and it actively discourages the very talent these firms are desperate to attract. Remember, the younger generation, particularly coming through, are looking for a firm with people like them, whom they can identify with, as a story that they can get on board with. The sixth and final frustration as I land this plane was accountability. Darryl Petrick, again, he challenged the traditional partner model directly. He said we need to stop thinking about it like a country club model where making partner means you lose accountability. Joe Manganelli highlighted the influx of private equity and how that's exposing this weakness in accountability. Mid-level managers are often left confused about what happens in their career, and the traditional pathway to equity partnership is dissolving. So things are changing. 2025, the profession didn't just struggle with change, it struggled with ownership of change and execution of change. And several leaders moved from a frustration mindset to a warning mindset. Apav Davidi said, cautioning firms against outsourcing their thinking is something I'm doing a lot. Buying tools or hiring software providers, it doesn't replace the need to work on the business and work on your clients. You can't buy your way out of a lack of strategic clarity. I've talked recently about the different kinds of firms that are going to appear in 2026 and beyond, and you can't be everything. Bob Lewis of the Visionary Group said, well, he made it all the more concrete when he said AI power in the world, all of the power is not going to solve the problems if you don't have the right data. And most firms don't even know which bank their clients use. That stood out for me. It's frightening. Greg Kautz, Black Owl, grounded the conversation by reminding leaders that AI is exciting, yes, but firms still need to return to the fundamentals like cybersecurity, internal controls. So the disappointment coming out here was not that the profession lacked ambition and lacked opportunity. It was just that it tried to leap forward without rebuilding its foundations. We're all good at chasing after the shiny new thing. And to understand the frustration that these leaders felt, imagine a Formula One team, the racing cars that spend millions on a high-tech AI-optimized engine, but insist on using the wooden steering wheel and a manual gear stick from a 1950s tractor. That's what's going on here. We have the raw power to win this race, but the controls, the engine, they're so antiquated that we can't find second gear. So that's the image coming through here as I draw this episode to a close. Look, in 2025, some accounting firms crushed it. They really rocked it and are moving forward so fast. But there's so much change. A lot of firms found themselves sitting on a huge amount of technological horsepower, yet they're being overtaken because they refuse to change how they drive the car and what's happening on the inside. That could be mindset, could be processes, could be pricing, lots of things. So the lesson this year in question 2 of this accounting reflection series was, when I asked people what's frustrating you, what challenged you, what disappointed you, it's not that the profession needs more tools, it's that it needs more courage to dismantle what no longer works and start implementing those tools. And that's the frustration that exactly what sets us up for the next question. So next week, I'm going to be asking people, what did you change your mind on last year? What changed your thinking? Not necessarily a 180-degree turn about face, but maybe pivoted. What modified you thinking? They say the mark of an educated person is the degree to which you're willing to let go of old ideas and embrace new ideas. And we all like to think of ourselves as agile. So make sure you tune in next week to Accounting Voices. I'm Rob Brown. We're on all the podcast channels and our YouTube channel as well. We're giving leaders in the accounting world the ammunition they need to get ahead of these trends and make sure you serve your clients and your teams, your firm well. Have a great day. See you next time.